This is John Iadarola. This is the lockdown edition of the show, and we are entering day 2. And we are really hoping that with today's broadcast, we're going to be able to get a little bit closer to our normal sort of show. I do want to give you an idea as people start to get into the live chat of what you can expect on today's program. We're going to be starting off with Bernie Sanders' very understandable anger at reporters pressing him on the future of his presidential campaign when he's trying to make sure that people get the aid that they desperately need. After that, we're going to be talking about Florida, one of the big states that's been so far incredibly hesitant to do anything to adapt to the coronavirus, finally taking steps in the right direction. As the title alludes to, Tulsi Gabbard is dropping her presidential campaign. I will be responding to that and also responding to the response to that, because both of those are interesting. And then we will be having a garbage people of the day, because there have been a lot of choices. So look forward to that as well. But let's see, we have people already getting into the chat. Thank you everybody for joining me. Some people are saying, I can see Liberty says, been in quarantine for a week. It's just been, a bit over a day for me. My wife's been basically quarantined for longer, and so our heart goes out to you. So thank you for everyone joining. Feel free, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can of course hit the like button to let more people know about this stream. But with that, why don't we jump into the news? Bernie Sanders is being pressed on what he's going to do with the future of his presidential bid. Turns out he has other things on his mind, kind of. We're sort of in an emergency. So why don't we go to him as he responds to those concerns.
Sir, what do you say to your supporters? There have been all this flurry today. Can you say to you?
Some of what we said is just not true. We sent out a statement.
What's your time frame?
I'll put this. I'm dealing with a global crisis. We're dealing with it, and you're asking me these questions, right?
You're running for president, so...
Well, right now, I'm trying to do my best to make sure that we don't have an economic meltdown and that people don't die. Is that enough for you to keep me busy for tonight?
So, look, I think that might actually be the first time I've ever heard Bernie Sanders swear, let alone drop an F-bomb. But, look, if there was going to be a reason, wouldn't this be it? If there was going to be a time, wouldn't this be the time? I mean, he's trying to probably get from, that was CNN's Mano Raju talking to him in the Senate hallways. He was probably going to a vote on the crisis, on dealing with this. And right now, Democratic leadership is really dropping the ball, and we're going to get to that later on. But the Republicans are really messing with the effort to pass this as well. Bernie Sanders is probably engaged in a struggle against both of them. And while, of course, he's paying attention to the presidential campaign, and he's definitely going to be planning whether he's continuing or not, all of that, we're going to get to that. Right now, he's in the middle of trying to respond to this. And so it seems kind of crazy to press him over and over like that. And I think a lot of us can probably understand where he's coming from there. There was a little bit more on this, though. Initially, most people found out about this interaction with Bernie Sanders from tweets, but we were able to find the audio. But let's go to just a little bit more on this. The reporter, Mano Raju, says, the blowup occurred about halfway through a 5-minute gaggle where Sanders talked about the unprecedented crisis of our lifetime, calling for a range of measures that the U.S. government should take in the midst of the economic crisis. Then Lisa Mascaro asked what he's saying to his supporters, and he sidestepped the question, noting that he sent out a statement. Then I asked about his time frame, and he was furious. Afterwards, he mailed out and answered questions about the crisis for about 2 more minutes. So there doesn't seem to be any acknowledgement in that he came out and his initial comments were about the crisis and then he'd do something about it. And then they started peppering him with questions about the campaign, and they act as if his anger makes no sense. And then they said, we mail it out, and started talking about the crisis again. But that's what he was trying to do the entire time. He was trying to address concerns about the crisis. And not just in terms of what is actually being done, but reassuring people that something is going to be done. Because I think a lot of people watching the news, seeing the squabbling back and forth, they don't necessarily have a lot of faith that their elected leaders really in either party are taking this as seriously as they should. Now, we have someone in Bernie Sanders who does take this seriously, and honestly, many of the programs that he's been advocating for, not only in these past 2 presidential campaigns, but for literally his entire, his entire career in politics, would have put us in a much stronger position to weather this storm. And it's sort of ironic that those are the sorts of policies that are being discussed right now to get us through this crisis, this emergency, when they would have helped us with all the past emergencies that we've been dealing with. Obviously, we need to deal with this, but people have been dying needlessly and unnecessarily because they've been left behind by our healthcare system for a very long time. And so, yeah, he should be furious. He should be enraged. I think that the reporters could be a little bit more understanding about that. But that said, I do want to turn to something a little bit lighter involving Bernie Sanders. I saw this video, and it doesn't mean anything. It's not anything. It's just really cute. So take a look at this.
Are you a zombie?
I was woken up from a very deep sleep by some little kid who promised me a zillion, cadillion, a billion times. And that brought about a strange change in my DNA. And now I have become uncontrollably a monster who's gonna eat up little kids who wake me up. I see a little kid who's gonna wake me up. That kid is in very deep.
So look, I'm gonna keep real. I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. Like, Bernie Sanders is almost always on message, serious, like worried. I've never seen him interact with anyone like that. Now, obviously, if he's going to, it should be with his grandson. And you could see when they pan to the grandson's face that he loves an interaction. It's just, look, I don't like sort of idealizing politicians. I don't believe in cults of personality or, putting all of your expectations and hopes for the future on individuals and all of that. And part of that is sort of like, you look at the way Trump supporters look at Trump and his family, and it seems nonsensical and kind of disgusting. But with Bernie Sanders, he keeps it so much about the policy, almost always, virtually never talking about himself, his own life. Like, getting that brief glimpse into an interaction with a member of his family was very interesting. I'm seeing people responding in the chat. I've never seen anything like that. Have you ever seen him be cute? I don't think, other than maybe his interaction with the bird in the 2016 campaign, that's not normally a mode that he goes into. And the thing is, like a lot of the rest of us, like when he, let's go back to the Raju video. So when he gets really angry, when he's trying to deal with this crisis, and they're like, no, are you going to drop out? Are you going to announce? What are you going to do? What are you going to tell your supporters? Like, he's probably thinking about that kid and the rest of the members of his family that he probably sees as being left behind by the response so far. And think about it. For whatever information you or I have about how things are going, what the government response looks like, he almost certainly has far more information and, I don't want to get too dark, but probably more reason to be worried about this, to be worried about what effect it could potentially have on a member of his family in the future. So look, that video obviously is just for fun. But, I need something like that. I follow an account on Twitter. It's Aussies Doing Things, and it's just videos of Australian shepherds being cute. I think we need stuff like that now, perhaps more than ever. But with that, let's turn now to other news. Some states have taken the coronavirus incredibly seriously, instituting closures of restaurants and bars, theme parks, concerts, all sorts of things like that. New York is obviously doing that. California has clamped down a lot. Some areas, like San Francisco, had, a total effective quarantine, at least for a period. Other states, by the way, have not really been doing much and have been resistant to make any sorts of changes that hypothetically could lead to frustration on the part of some of their population, or certainly could hurt tourism. Now, Florida is perhaps one of the best examples of that. I want you to take a look at a comparison video. I saw this on Morning Joe, and it's a bit of Paris, which is locked down, and Clearwater, Florida. Take a look at this.
On the left, Paris, France yesterday, one of the world's most visited cities, turning into a virtual ghost town. The entire country currently under lockdown. And then on the right, the beaches of Clearwater, Florida, clearly in the throes of spring break, with people who were not listening to the severe warnings that scientists and doctors from the highest levels of government are trying to send them.
So, you saw that video. Now, bear in mind, the video from Clearwater supposedly comes from yesterday, at most 48 hours ago. That's going to be important as we go forward because there are going to be some people in Florida government who are denying that that sort of thing still existed in the past few days. But you see, France, which has been hit hard by coronavirus, has a lot of cases, a lot of deaths, taking it very seriously. Paris is effectively a ghost town. It's much like some of the video you've probably seen of Italy, by the way, where things are being just entirely shut down, and necessarily so, if they're going to flatten the curve, get a handle on this thing. But then there's all this spring break activity, and beaches are just packed, crowds of people. Now, I'll say the shot of Clearwater right there doesn't look as packed as some scenes from Florida beaches that I've seen, but still a lot of people. And whether because they don't think that this is actually a big deal, they don't trust the information they've been given about coronavirus, or possibly just because they already planned this vacation and they're not going to waste it, like they already have the flight and the hotel, I guess they're going to go through with it. They're going out there and, in theory, possibly risking contracting coronavirus. And the thing is, up until literally today, Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis, he didn't want to make any big changes. You know, I mean, look, if the CDC is making these recommendations of crowd sizes, he might go along with that, but he wasn't doing anything. Now, thankfully, as of this morning, we have seen a shift in that. And so here is Ron DeSantis on Fox and Friends.
Have decided to close their beaches to groups, but at the same time, you're not closing the state beaches to groups of less than 10, right?
So the message, I think, for spring breakers is that the party's over in Florida. You're not going to be able to congregate on any beach in the state. Many of the hot spots that people like to go to, whether it's Miami Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Clearwater Beach, are closed entirely for the time being. The bars are closed, so you're not going to have a place to congregate there. So we would just tell those folks, maybe come back next year when things are better, but that is not what we're looking for here in the state of Florida. Every single beach will have to abide by the CDC guidelines. No more than 10 people. You have to be socially distant. Not every beach is going to remain open, but some will. We have sheriff's deputies in places like Brevard County. They're going to be out on ATVs, making sure there's no groups.
Okay, so that's Ron DeSantis. That's Fox and Friends. And so he's saying, yes, these big crowds on beaches are finally going to end. And like, I guess we should be happy. We should, thank him for finally being reasonable, in light of what we're facing. It's Thursday today, right? I don't know. I'm in quarantine. It's hard to know. It's Thursday. They should have done this days and days ago. And look, anything's better than nothing, I suppose. But that is days where it's not irrational to think that people might have congregated on those beaches, go into the bars, and maybe contracted something. And when we're trying to limit the spread, that might have given it just enough time to be worse than it could have been. And he goes on to say in that video, by the way, that the video you've been seeing, people have been spreading around video. He's not talking about the Morning Joe one in particular, but he's saying video that's been spread. That's from like Saturday. That's before the CDC really clamped down supposedly on the crowd size. And I get why he would say that. He's probably being criticized quite a bit from being one of the most like recalcitrant governors in dealing with COVID-19, but it's just not true. We showed you that video. That video is from like 30 hours ago. That is not from Saturday. That is after the CDC kept clamping down from 500 to 250 to 50 to now it's something like 10 for gatherings. And so he's simply being completely dishonest there. I don't know for sure why. It could be that he's bought into the same sort of misinformation that's informed a lot of Donald Trump and Fox News commentary about this pandemic. Maybe he just doesn't really take it seriously. Maybe he's worried about spring break. Maybe he wanted to get through as much of that as possible, make sure that the economic damage there in Florida wasn't worse. I don't know what his reasoning is, but I do know that he is, like Donald Trump, he is lying about his record on this issue. And of course, Fox and Friends, they weren't there to correct him. We're going to get to Fox and Friends in their own attempt to sort of reframe what they've been saying about this. But Ron DeSantis, he's effectively saying that some of these beaches are going to be shut down. Let's note that in that video, he did not say that they're all going to be shut down. And look, if you have people going around on ATVs and breaking up groups, okay, that's good. That doesn't mean that they're not still going to happen. And it's not to say that all of this is on him, But if he's been dragging his heels, if he's been lying up until now, how much faith do you have in him going forward? That Florida, which is not only a large population, but also, let's keep it real, it is an older population. On average, the population is older. It is likely that they're going to be hit harder than other states by coronavirus as it continues to spread. And he does not look like the right person to deal with that. He does not appear to be taking it seriously as of right now. Now, there are other states. I'm going to have to check in to see if maybe there's been progress today, but I know that Texas so far, another big state, quite Republican, not taking it very seriously. Like, this is a story that we've been talking about for weeks now, where Fox News and Donald Trump kept telling, week after week after week, kept telling their fans, don't take this seriously, it's just a hoax, it's not a big deal. And now some of them are starting to change their tune, but what do you know? Red states are slower to deal with this. And that's going to produce costs for their people, for their base. I worry about what the numbers could end up looking like. At some point, an analysis, a book they're gonna go back, they're gonna look at the numbers, and they're gonna break it down based on ideology, party ID. I guarantee there's gonna be an effect where more people are going to have suffered from this that identify as Trump supporters than not. Maybe we're not supposed to say that, but that's the way I see it. Okay, let's turn now to Fox. Fox and Friends has been the source of quite a bit of misinformation about the coronavirus in terms of what you should do about it. Now, they appear to be changing that, and they are advising people not to congregate in big groups, but that doesn't mean they're not going to use this to get in a few shots along the way. So take a look at this video. This is Nicole Safiers, Fox News medical contributor on Fox and Friends this morning.
Spring breakers just having little care for what is going on. You know, not only as a mother of three, but my entire book, Make America Healthy Again, I talk about how bad behavior and big government has caused our trillion-dollar health crisis. This is no different. We know that this generation, they like to take it to the streets, as AOC says. They do protests. They feel that they are invincible. Part of this is just being young and not having compassion for those older, but part of that is also their parenting as well. So they're going to force themselves into a position of martial law where we're actually going to need to quarantine them, because if they can't make good choices for the betterment of our country, then we need to separate them.
Okay, so look, she's saying that hypothetically there might need to be martial law. That appears to indicate that she's taking this very seriously. She was referring there to effectively what Ron DeSantis is responding to. These spring breakers who are getting together. You've probably seen the videos of them talking and saying that they're not very worried about this. They're certainly not going to change their plans. You know, they're going to party and have fun. They're young. It doesn't affect the young or whatever. There's a lot of myths out there that are going to do a lot of damage. And so she seems to be taking it seriously. Now, oddly, I don't know if you noticed what I noticed. What was that thing about AOC in the middle of that? That young people like think that they're invincible. And one reason is because AOC says to get out there and protest. Like, come on, that's not just a random weird aside. There's an objective there. There's a goal there. And you're going to see this a lot now. Now that the right is theoretically taking this seriously, they need to find out who to blame for this. And especially coming off of months of not taking it seriously, of making the crisis worse than it had to be, they're going to want to divert blame wherever they can. We were talking yesterday on the show about the attempt to get people as focused on China as possible. I've seen even more of that so far this morning. Maybe we'll talk a bit more about that later. But if they can put it on the Democrats, they're going to do that too. And in the early stages, it is going to be very weird and fumbling and awkward references to AOC telling people to protest and stuff like that when there's no reasonable or logical connection there. But eventually you can expect that it will probably become a little bit more sophisticated. So right now they're trying to throw it onto her. God knows where they're going to go from there. But anyway, look, I do agree. I'm glad that she's taking it seriously and that she's doing it on Fox and Friends, because the Fox and Friends audience does need to catch up to the rest of the world. But the reason that they need to catch up is that they have been misinformed by Fox and Friends. And so let's turn to a little bit of this. You remember this? Fox News hosts urge viewers to fly, claiming the safest time to do it is during a pandemic, despite health officials' warnings. We talked about that on the Damage Report. That was Ainsley Earhart saying that this is the perfect time, in fact, to fly. That was 6 days ago. That was not February. That wasn't like the beginning of this. That was just before the last weekend. And I understand, I get, it's taken a long time to get people to take this seriously, but there were plenty of people who knew what was up when Ainsley Earhart was telling people to book a flight to Greece or whatever, or to hang out in LAX. But if you were watching Fox and Friends, that's what you thought going into this last weekend, that in fact, this is like the perfect time. Let me read her full quote, actually. She says, "It's actually the safest time to fly. Everyone I know that's flying right now, terminals are pretty much dead. Ghost towns." First of all, maybe finesse the language a little bit when you're talking about a pandemic, but that was just last weekend. I guess they've forgotten about that. I didn't see Ainsley Earhart apologize for those comments or anything like that. But again, to be fair, it isn't just her. So let's go to Devin Nunes. We talked about this on the show as well. He was on Fox News saying there's a lot of concerns with the economy here because people are scared to go out. He's talking about California. But I will say just one of the things you can do if you're healthy, you and your family, it's great time to just go out. Go to a local restaurant. Likely you can get in easily. Let's not hurt the working people in this country that are relying on wages and tips to keep their small business going. So don't run to the grocery store and buy, $4,000 of food. Go to your local pub. So that is a Republican congressman telling people 3 days ago that they should be going to their local pub, their local restaurant. Look, it was like right on the cusp of all of those being shut down across the state of California. So 6 days ago, you should be planning flights. You should be traveling around the country. 3 days ago, all this stuff about like quarantining and eating at home, the hashtag stay at home, all that stuff. Forget that. That was just 3 days ago. And look, if they've landed on the right spot, if they've finally moved on to giving people the right advice, that will be progress. But I'm not ready to just move on and pretend that they didn't do what they did and that it won't produce, potentially more cases of coronavirus, more unnecessary deaths due to it. Like, we have to remember this. I get it. We have to fix the problem. We have to come together. We have to make sure that we flatten the curve. We have to get aid to the people that need it. But we also can't forget the people that made it worse than it needed to be. And right now, across the network, Fox News hosts are pretending that they didn't say what they definitely said. I saw Sean Hannity, I think it was last night on his show. He was saying that he never referred to coronavirus as a hoax. He 100% did. It was like a week and a half ago on his show. He called it the latest cudgel to attack Donald Trump with. It's the latest hoax. And so, look, he's worried, like all of us are, except he's worried about his reputation. He's worried about people remembering that he was on the wrong side of this. That he, like Donald Trump, perhaps because of Donald Trump, was engaged in an attempt to get people to not take this seriously up until the last possible moment. And so we're just going to note that for the record, okay? Maybe at some point there'll be some sort of consequence. I know Trish Regan, she sort of lost her show. They're saying it's not because she was calling it a hoax, but it seems weird that she's the one out of all of them when she had, I would say, the least extreme out of Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, all of that. Tucker Carlson doesn't deny that it's real, but he is trying to get you to focus all of your anger against the Chinese people. And it's weird that she's the one that suffered consequences as a result of it. I feel like we should note that. Okay, we're going to move on to the big breaking news of the day. That's Tulsi Gabbard in just a moment. But let me just catch up a little bit on the chat. I apologize. I saw one go by that said was like a hello, thank you for that. Joseph Laundry is saying, why are you all choosing to ignore the members who support you? We want poll discrepancy coverage. Look, I can't say anything about the main show. I don't know if they talked about it or not, but I did reference it. I've seen the articles that people are throwing around, and I'm not saying that there's not anything there. But I'm not as convinced by the numbers that I'm seeing. And not just exit polls, but polls going into it. I mean, like on Tuesday, the states that Biden won, he was polling 20, 30 points up. And so, no, I'm not shocked that in the end he ended up winning by those amounts. That had been what the polls were showing for a week or two at that point. We can still be incredibly frustrated by certainly any discrepancies that we do see. Totally fair. The fact that they had the election at all, obviously we should be angry about that. And this should not be the end of it, by the way. We should be pushing for Tom Perez should be stepping down. He should have never been putting pressure on the states to actually go forward with it. All of that. And honestly, whatever effect we think might be there, I think that the media had a much stronger effect. So I would say, look, I get your anger, I get your passion. You were entirely right to have it, but I think that there are some fairly obvious issues in terms of holding the primaries in the first place, the way that the media has helped to manipulate this race in the wake of Bernie's wins in the first 3 states, all of that. And I think it'll be a lot easier to get a lot of people on our side because those are just incontrovertible. I think it's just an easier case to make, to look for reform in that area. And by the way, it is the result of that should be getting rid of the leadership of the DNC. If that's who you believe is behind literally anything else, then okay, let's get rid of them. I'm totally there with you. Okay, with that, let's jump back into the news. And we're going to have this video ready to go. The big news of the morning in the Democratic primary race was that Tulsi Gabbard is suspending her campaign. And at the time that she's doing that, she's also doing an endorsement. So here is Tulsi Gabbard.
Throughout my life and throughout this campaign, my motivation has been to serve God, our country, and the American people as best I can. I feel that the best way that I can be of service at this time is to continue to work for the health and well-being of the people of Hawaii and our country in Congress, and to stand ready to serve in uniform should the Hawaii National Guard be activated. Now, after Tuesday's election, it's clear that Democratic primary voters have chosen Vice President Joe Biden to be the person who will take on President Trump in the general election. I know Vice President Biden and his wife, and I'm grateful to have called his son, Beau, a friend who also served in the National Guard. Now, although I may not agree with the Vice President on every issue, I know that he has a good heart, and he's motivated by his love for our country and the American people. I'm confident that he will lead our country guided by the spirit of aloha, respect, and compassion, and thus help heal the divisiveness that has been tearing our country apart. So today, I'm suspending my presidential campaign and offering my full support to Vice President Joe Biden in his quest to bring our country together.
Okay, so look, I think a lot of people were really shocked by that. They were not expecting this to happen. Tulsi had given every indication that she planned to continue her race, to the convention or whatever. Look, depending on whether you were a supporter of her, your understanding about why that is probably different. I would say she was pretty clearly running not because she thought that she could become a president, not at least in the last couple of months. I mean, there was no chance of that. But I would say, I think that the best interpretation is she was doing it to continue to elevate issues that she cared about. I think that that's a fairly fair way to describe it. But she is ending it. And there's a couple of potential reasons for that. It could be the coronavirus. It's much harder for her to actually campaign. Obviously, basically all the campaigns are effectively only doing remote sort of gatherings and digital addresses, things like that, and so she can't even continue to that extent. It could be that she understands that the probability that she's going to get coverage when she talks about the issues that she cares about is probably just about nil in this media environment. So probably all of that and more is combining to her changing her calculus on staying in the race, and so she will be dropping out. Now, swirling around all of that, though, aside from just her decision to leave, is, man, Twitter has been a bad place in relation to this. Like, look, I'm being completely upfront. In the same way that I was about Andrew Yang when he dropped out, I wasn't a supporter of Andrew Yang. I was not a supporter of Tulsi Gabbard. But I will say there are some people who I think were supporters of Tulsi Gabbard who were responding on Twitter sort of negatively to her dropping out and endorsing Biden. And there's multiple different ways that you could sort of be angry about that. So let's break them all down. So there are a lot of people like me who are fans of Bernie Sanders who think, look, if you're going to endorse someone, you could endorse Bernie Sanders, or you could not endorse at all. You could do that rather than endorsing Biden. So a lot of the left is going to be very angry about this because she's not only choosing to endorse when she could at the very least sit out, if not endorse Bernie, but to endorse Biden just, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense based on the issues that she's made the core of her campaign. I mean, look, from her point of view, her race is about anti-interventionism. She's anti-war, all of that. I think it's obviously a little bit more nuanced than that, but that certainly has been sort of the core narrative of her campaign. And Joe Biden, out of the remaining two, he is the Iraq War guy. He certainly is more likely as president to engage in, intervention of a variety of different sorts than Bernie Sanders would. So if you were going to endorse someone just to get your message out, it seems like it would make more sense for Bernie Sanders. The race is not done. I mean, look, Bernie could drop out. He could. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I was shocked by this. I could be shocked by that. But to endorse Biden, it doesn't make sense from an ideological perspective. If you look at the entirety of the primary campaign, it makes a little bit more sense. Like many people have noted throughout this campaign that she was incredibly hands-off with Joe Biden. And the same thing that leads me to wonder why she would endorse someone who was, in support of the Iraq War and other conflicts. Like, why wasn't she raising that at the debates? Why wasn't she talking about that? There were months and months where he was the front runner and she had no interest. In fact, at one point, defended him from criticisms of his vote on the war in Iraq. There was even that period where, at sort of like, you remember, at each debate, she was sort of taking on like the person that was rising in the polls. Like it was Elizabeth Warren once, it was Kamala Harris, it might have been Buttigieg at one point. But across none of that did she go after Joe Biden. And that stood out to a lot of people. Like, we could disagree about why exactly she was doing that. I know some people think that she wants to be his VP. I personally don't think that she thinks that that's a possibility. But after a campaign of not attacking like the guy who is most emblematic of what you're trying to fix in politics, I guess to endorse him in the end is less shocking. Now, I know some people were rightfully pointing out that, according to Hillary Clinton's logic, where she is only in this to sort of sway people in the way that like Russia wants or whatever. Like I saw there was a super chat, Andrew Dwyer was like, Biden has a Russian asset supporting him now, I think pointing out that sort of narrative that they had been pushing. Then this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like the only argument that would allow that to continue is to say, well, in a primary that's still going on, hypothetically, Putin would be more in support, but that's just nonsense. No, I guess that she thinks that he has the best chance, that she's looking at the math, I guess. In the end, it's going to leave a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters really frustrated. I mean, not only that she continued this run for so long when clearly she wasn't going to win and was probably taking, a point or two away from Bernie Sanders, but never endorsed him, even though, hypothetically she agrees with him on a lot of the issues. That's going to be really frustrating. And so a lot of the reaction is going to be similar to with Andrew Yang, I think. I know I tweeted once about this and people got mad at me. They were like, why'd you attack Andrew Yang but not Tulsi? Look, I feel pretty similar about the two of them. It doesn't really make sense that they would endorse him unless it is just, I want to have access and influence, that I care about, anti-interventionism, or I care about UBI, and I think that Biden's going to be the nominee, and so I want an in with him later. Maybe it's just cold, hard, political math or pragmatism or something like that. I don't know. We can disagree with it, but I'm just trying to explain where they're potentially coming from. I do want to say, though, some people are like shocked that she's dropping out and endorsing Biden. These are people who hated her. Most of them are probably Biden supporters. This is sort of the Hillary camp. They're like shocked that she's going to endorse the Democrat, that she's not running as a third-party candidate. And while I disagree, I disagree with her quite a bit on a number of different things. Like, I've been defending her in that area for a long time. Let's just go briefly to this. Let me show you. So this video, Tulsi 100% won't run a third-party candidacy. Yeah, that was on the damage report. That was back in November of last year. And I laid out all of the evidence that the people, including Hillary, who are saying she's in this to cause chaos, and at some point she's going to drop out and run a third-party candidacy to try to get Donald Trump elected, there was just not a lot of reason to believe that. She had been incredibly clear and consistent on the record saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to support the Democrat. Just like Bernie, she said it over and over and over and over again. And no matter how many times she said it, they would always come back with asking the question again. And it's that old school tactic of, they're not asking the question to find out the answer. They're asking the question to imply that you haven't been clear. It's an attack, not a query, basically, at that point. But no, she had done any number of interviews saying in the end she's going to support the eventual nominee. Now, that does not mean that she had to endorse Biden here. Like, she could have not endorsed. The race is still going on. There are still two other candidates in this. And so if you, like me, are, you're on the left, you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, you're totally right to potentially be mad about this. But the fact that she is going to endorse someone at some point, I don't know why the centrists are so shocked by that. I guess they're blinded by the sort of the narrative, the view that they had concocted of who she was. But she was always saying that. And by the way, I'll say what I said in that video. You can go back and watch that video. It's still on the channel. She supported Hillary Clinton in 2016 in the general election. So did Bernie. And both of them are being very clear in 2016 and 2020 that they're eventually going to support the candidate. Tulsi Gabbard is not an independent. She is a Democrat. I can't say what'll happen in the future, but she supported the party's nominee in 2016. She's doing that right now. And some people are like, I guess just trying to be amazed by this when it's incredibly consistent with what she's been saying she's going to do. By the way, I see Mind of the North Star wrote a super chat saying this was the anti-war candidate that wouldn't attack Biden on his Iraq vote. This endorsement is no surprise. Also, Anna was right about her. Look, again, it might have been that the whole time she was thinking there's the possibility, like I said, of being his VP or maybe being in his cabinet or something like that. There's probably still at least some small chance of that, I guess. Maybe that's why she didn't do it. I would say that of all of the ways that she could try to take someone down, and she had multiple attempts, and some of them more successful than others. I think her attacks against Kamala Harris were quite effective. There was no, like, it was just teed up for her against Joe Biden. And honestly, like, as a Bernie Sanders supporter, what if she had? What if she had made a big deal out of his support for the war in Iraq back in July or August of last year? Could that have had an effect? Maybe. Biden he was in first. He had a big lead. Now, he eventually did go down. It's possible that the same sort of consolidation of the centrists would have happened, but it could have had some effect. I don't know. Maybe we'll never know. But anyway, she's moving on. The question, I think, will be at this point, if she does, so she endorsed Biden, if she supports Biden, campaigns for him, will she be able to get some of her fans to support Biden? That will be interesting to see. I guess that will be what she'll be going for. And I know that she's spent a lot of time on Fox News. They've given her, a platform. Maybe she'll be able to bring over some of those, like Republicans who aren't huge Trump supporters. I guess if Biden does accept this endorsement, which as of our filming he has not, that will probably be the reason. But we'll have to wait to find out. Okay, one more segment coming up in just a minute. Let me catch up on the chat. By the way, I did want to say, so far the stream is not broken. That did happen yesterday. I don't have an explanation for it. I will say that going forward, even if the stream breaks, the videos that we do should be available a little bit later on YouTube, so you can expect that. Understand that we are trying to work out any of these kinks while we can. It's difficult. That's all I can really say at this point. By the way, if you have not yet hit the like button, please do that. It helps more people to know about the stream and to support the show. I can see that a lot of you have done that. Let's see. Robeson says, why not run for Congress again when it became clear that she had no chance? I don't know. Look, I guess the most charitable interpretation would be that she thought the only chance I have is to give it my all, and so I'm going to do that, and maybe something could happen. And look, some people, I mean, Biden all of a sudden blew up again after falling apart. It's not like there weren't big shifts in this campaign. I think that the chance of that happening was very low, but that could be the explanation. I see someone saying CNN is going to be so confused. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are so confused, but like I'm saying, I think that if you've been watching her, I don't think that these moves, I'm not saying that they're not surprising ideologically, but in terms of the record, in terms of the last year, I don't think that they're that shocking. Okay. Gabby Marita says you are my quarantine like button supervisor. Well, everybody clock in by hitting the like button and also the bell. If you haven't already done the bell, that is the best way to get notifications. Oh, and also, especially, we're probably going to be doing multiple live videos on some days. And if you have not hit the bell, then you're unlikely to get the additional ones after the first. There's like a time span where they'll only give you a certain number of notifications, but you can increase the odds of getting it by hitting the bell. Brooke, thank you. I'm trying to look swell. I know someone said that they like the lighting. Thank you for that. We're trying to soften it a little bit. If there's glare, which I guess there is, maybe I need to tone it down a little bit. But anyway, Bright Wanderer is saying, so Tulsi is out of politics? I mean, I definitely wouldn't say that. She's not running for re-election. Although, I would have to look at when the primary date is. Is it impossible that she could run a write-in candidacy or something? And she could certainly run for something in the future. I mean, she's been running for a long time, and that has raised her national profile. A lot of people know who she is now. So, nobody's counted out in American politics. Okay, with that, why don't we jump into our last story? Okay, let me get this ready. Trying to have as much of the regular stuff in terms of segments and graphics and videos, but sometimes it is a little bit difficult. So, let's jump into this. It's time to take out the trash. Okay, that could have been smoother, but anyway, it did happen. We did have the intro. So this is Garbage People. I've got my trash can here. It's not the one from the studio, although maybe I'll go and get that, because I anticipate that we're probably going to have a lot of garbage to deal with in the near future. So we've got our little trashy here. It's been stocked up with some people who've been horrible recently, and we've got a lot more for you. So because this is our first lockdown edition, Garbage People, I wanted to give you a few, and what do you know, the universe has delivered. So first, we have Republican Senator Ron Johnson. Take a look at what he said recently. Okay. Okay, perhaps you're not going to be able to. I apologize for that. So here's what he said. I'm not denying what a nasty disease COVID-19 can be. By the way, that's a great start to a paragraph. But he goes on to say, and how it's obviously devastating to somewhere between 1 and 3.4% of the population, but that means 97 and 99% will get through this and develop immunities and will be able to move beyond this. But we don't shut down our economy because tens of thousands of people die on the highways. It's a risk we accept so we can move about. We don't shut down our economies because tens of thousands of people die from the common flu. Getting coronavirus is not a death sentence, except for maybe no more than 3.4% of our population, and I think probably far less. Whoa. Any one of those sentences probably would have resulted in you being in the trash. So I'm gonna put him in there for right now, and here's why. If 3.4% of our population dies, that's millions of people. He's talking about it as if it's some sort of silver lining that only 3.4% might die. No, that's horrendous. And if we have to take drastic actions to make sure that that doesn't happen, that nothing even approaching that happens, I think that's the reasonable thing to do. I'm going to extend a lot of goodwill to the American people and say that they probably agree with me, that that's probably the reasonable thing to do. But this is a senator telling people, just get used to the idea that millions are going to die, honestly. Like, are we really going to damage the economy over that, over millions of deaths? That's honestly, that feels a bit like what Donald Trump has been saying, the over concern for Wall Street and the strength of the economy, quote unquote, rather than worrying about the American people, about actual people. And by the way, he says there, it's a horrible analogy too. We don't shut down the economy because tens of thousands of people die on the highways. Yeah, that's true. Well, first of all, this is many, many times that. But more importantly, we have introduced how many different attempts to stop that from happening. We have, we have laws of the road. We have speed limits. We have regulations for safety in automobiles. We do many things to make sure that less people die on the highways. And bear in mind, back in the day, there were elected representatives who were against those sorts of measures, who didn't think that you should have to wear your seatbelt, that there shouldn't be speed limits and those sorts of things. That same sort of ignorance, that continues in senators like now the Republican senator of the trash can, Ron Johnson. But he's not the only one. Okay, we're gonna put some other people in there. Okay, I'm ready for this one. Okay, let's see. Okay, we got Don Young. Okay, Don Young, why does he belong in there? Well, Don Young skipped a vote on the coronavirus relief bill to go to an NRA fundraiser. And then he went to a senior center and started making jokes about the coronavirus, calling it the beer virus. And he told people, this is just last weekend, at that senior center, go forth with everyday activities. Put him in there. Seniors who are in a place designed to provide quick access to healthcare for them, which we know have already been devastated in some places. Washington had, outbreak of coronavirus that killed many at one of these sorts of centers. He goes there after raising money from the NRA and tells people, don't listen to this stuff about self-quarantine. Just go about your regular day. Go to shuffleboard, play some poker, do some bingo, whatever. This is what we have. This is what we're dealing with. Senators and representatives who fundamentally do not take this seriously. And they're not the only ones. This is Representative Andy Biggs. So he voted against the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Do you want to know why? Well, he did an interview on Monday with the conservative Christian group, the Family Research Council, and he voted against it on Saturday because it included provisions for domestic partnerships, including same-sex relationships. So look, it's not that he's against the bill or against helping the American people, but it talks about gay relationships. That is a line too far for Andy Biggs when it comes to making sure that people don't die, that those who are losing their jobs, businesses are shutting down, that we get relief to those people. It's not that he doesn't care about that. It's that he just cares about discriminating against the LGBT community a little bit more at this point. But you know what? What's that? 3 people that we've just put in there? I think there's probably more room, I think. So let's put a whole bunch of people. Republican senators on Wednesday teamed up to kill an amendment introduced by Democratic Senator Patty Murray that would have expanded paid sick leave to millions of U.S. workers left out of a bipartisan coronavirus relief package. Every Republican present for the vote, 51 in total, voted against the amendment, while every Senate Democrat voted in favor. Look, I'll have words for the Senate Democrats in just a minute, but I think we need to put, can you see this? I don't know if you can see this. That's all of them. So they had an issue with expanding paid sick leave to more workers. Now, they have passed a bill that includes paid sick leave, but is for a very small percentage of the population. People who are directly impacted by coronavirus, businesses of a certain level but not bigger, and the attempt to just expand it, like we have to do something about this. No, they are still splitting hairs on the size of the business and those sorts of things. Again, they care, just not as much as they care about business interests, I guess. So let's put the entirety of their caucus in there. Man, the trash can is going to be really full in like a week. But by the way, let's also note that they are not the only ones who belong in there. Look, I guess you're not supposed to say this, is unpopular or whatever. But what's going on with the Democratic Party right now? Other than a few individuals who do seem to be taking this seriously, we've called out a few, we will more in the future. The lack of passion for this, the lack of like speed on this is just shocking. Like, first of all, morally, this is the biggest crisis that they have been faced with in many years, and thus the drive to do something about it should be bigger than anything else. But instead, you've got like Nancy Pelosi is like holding up the relief package to say that we need to means test to make sure that these checks aren't going to people who hypothetically might be able to get by without them. Look, I understand you wanting to keep the price tag down, I guess, but people are suffering now. And like, again, I don't want to go too far with this, but Donald Trump, whether he actually supports the sorts of things he's saying or whether he actually goes through with it, in terms of rhetoric, is seeming more compassionate, more filled with empathy, honestly, more progressive on this issue than at least what Nancy Pelosi is projecting to the country. And I think that people are going to see that. Look, and so if morally, if you're not, you don't have the kick in the ass to do something about this, how about pragmatically, politically? This is a crisis, both objective and made worse by Donald Trump's rhetoric and his lack of action. The fact that he wasted literally months. This is an opportunity to both do what is right and to have the country see that you're doing what is right. And they're wasting that opportunity. They're allowing Mitt Romney to seem like a progressive when he's the one, out in front talking about UBI. Now, that's not to say that there aren't a lot of Democrats who are supporting that. Certainly there are. And Bernie Sanders' plan goes way further than the rest of these. That's why he does not belong in the trash. But the Democrats have got to get together, and they've got to come together in terms of their messaging and their priorities. They are bungling this opportunity. It is definitely going to end up hurting many, many people, lots of whom probably identify as Democrats. And so, look, there's some individuals that have gone above and beyond in terms of belonging in that trash can. But right now, the vast majority of our elected representatives still, no matter what they say when they do interviews, they are fundamentally not taking this seriously. all of the little like roadblocks and the little, I worry about this. Hey, let's take it easy because we got to deal with this. All of that stuff shows that they might want you to believe that they're taking it seriously, but that's not what I'm seeing. Okay, so lots of people in the trash. By the way, you can, of course, tweet me and tweet at the damage report if you have suggestions for people that you think deserve a spot there. And also, by the way, one of the things that we definitely want to bring back, perhaps if we can have Brett on tomorrow, we might do one of our top 10 lists. You know, we got to have a little bit of fun in the lockdown. If you have suggestions for those lists, you can comment, you can tweet at me, and all of that too. So let's, before we end, and I know this has been a long stream, thank you to the thousands of you who are watching and who've shared the stream and liked it. I really do appreciate that. Let me catch up a little bit on some of these super chats. Green Lady says, a senior center is a place for seniors to drive to from their homes for socializing. It's not a nursing home. No, I understand that. What I'm saying is that the population that he's talking to is at the most at risk for this. And so if you're going to be spreading misinformation, this is literally the last place that you should do that. But thank you for the clarification. I do appreciate that. Okay, I think I'm good on the super chats. Let's see what people are saying. Let's not fool ourselves. The Democrat politicians are worrying about their money and their donors more than the people who elect them. Well, that's a constant, definitely. Sorry if you hate Dems and are projecting. No, I don't hate them. I want them to do what's right. And if we're going to call out when the Republican Party does something wrong, I have to do that for them as well. Especially when they control the House. It's on them. And the leadership more than anyone else. I'm not talking about some random, you know, congressperson. I'm talking about literally the leadership of half of our legislature. 777 J Plum says, top 10 board games to play while on lockdown. Look, honestly, I might do that. No one's going to watch it. Nobody cares. But I might do that. Just for a little bit of fun. And people have been asking, first of all, some people think that this is not a real background. It is a real background. It's not a green screen. And yes, that is part of my personal collection. It'll probably come to us talking to a bit of that at some point. Let's see. $1,000 for the rich. Look, that's what Nancy Pelosi's saying, and I get it. Here's my answer to that. Here's my solution to that. Rather than having a committee spend the next 3 weeks coming up with a complex formula that makes sure that certain people but not other people get the check, or that it's phased in and certain people get 60% of it, certain people get 100% of it. How about this? Send the checks to everyone and then amend the tax code for this year to do that. And you will have plenty of time for the next year. I mean, you'll have plenty of time to do that. And you can get it back at that point for the people who didn't need it, millionaires and all that stuff. I'm saying get the aid to people, to the people now. There are people who've already lost their jobs. There are people that are in the process of losing their jobs right now. They don't have literally weeks to then have a bill passed that then takes time for the checks to actually be sent out. Let's do it now, and we can fix it afterward. We will have plenty of time, even after we're totally done with this entire thing, to fix it then. I think that is 100% reasonable. Okay, Stephanie J says, do you think we could be like the greatest generation in this situation, helping each other out and being open to FDR-type solutions? God, I hope so. And thankfully, we have some politicians who are putting forward what I would describe as FDR-type solutions. Zane says, Johnny Pie, you need to follow JR's chunky powder tips. Your whole cheeks are glaring. Yes, I'm going to turn down the lights a little bit on the next one. It doesn't look that hot from here, hot in terms of lighting. I mean, definitely looks hot, but let's see. I'd watch the board game lockdown vid. Jay Tresh says board games rock. I hope so. Look, if you have a lot of time that you're going to be spending at home, please do that. Jeremy says, Nando said this exact same thing on yesterday's main show. I'm assuming you're not talking about the top 10 board games. But, you know, I agree with Nando on a lot of things, and certainly hoping to have him Skype into the show as a guest at some point soon. We're going to be doing some tests a little bit later on to make sure that we can smoothly integrate guests, but assuming we can do that, we want to pull the trigger on that very soon. I know that you guys are expecting that we're still going to have, you know, like, activists and politicians, authors, things like that. I definitely want to do that as well as our regular guests. I want to do the show with Brett tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. Alicia says, I was listening to Michael Moore's podcast and less than halfway through the video cut out and was removed. He was talking truth about the pandemic. Does it happen often? Videos being removed? I sincerely doubt it, especially if it's a podcast. I don't see how they would do that. It's probably just, look, I was talking about Bloomberg yesterday and my stream cut out. I don't think that it was actually Bloomberg. I guess anything's possible, but no, I don't. I think that there are probably simpler explanations for that. Let's see. Lords of Waterdeep is great fun. Okay, thank you everybody for your suggestions there. I will definitely be tweeting about it, so follow me at Iadarola and follow at The Damage Report, not only for if you want to make suggestions about lists, garbage people, those sorts of things, but also if you want to know when we're going to be going live, because I'm going to try to always have this morning stream at the same time, around 9:15, 9:30 Pacific time, but there will probably be additional ones as well. And so there will be a lot more to come. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Really do appreciate you doing that. It's difficult times, and we're adapting as you guys are. And thank you for being with us while we're doing that. But for now, we're done. I will see you in the next one.